Traders, how are you? Marcello, founder of the Day Trading Academy, co-founder of Speed Up Trader, where you guys can come and apply to use funded accounts instead of your own account to be able to trade with in the markets. Futures and Forex now. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. So overall this week, another situation where the coronavirus affected quite a bit the markets. We've had an amazing amount of volatility, especially in the Dow, going from the single worst day to the single best day, just volatility all over the place. On Monday, just remember, not this last week, but the week before last week, meaning 2 weeks ago. If you guys are watching this video a little bit later, it was the third week of November, 17 to 21. We're coming off the worst week since the financial crisis. The Dow dropped 12.4%. S&P 500 plunged 11.5%, and just as I mentioned, the Dow recorded its worst one-day drop in history on Thursday, 12.4% overall for the Dow. And just so you guys remember, if you don't know, the market's going to go up and down, right? But when the market goes up and it goes back for a second and then it continues, it's generally considered a pullback or a retracement. Once it goes from the peak down 10%, that's considered a correction. So it's more, think of it like more of a deep retracement kind of thing. Even though, in the long scheme of things, we're talking about 10, 20 years, the market might get the correction during the contraction of the economy and then recover and make new highs again. But again, once we're in correction territory, it's not necessarily a good thing for the overall economy overall, since a lot of us have money in the stock market. More importantly, our families, student funds, I forget what they're called, also the pension funds, right? Most of us, you guys have retirement accounts, 401ks, Roth IRAs. You guys have all your money in the stock market. So after markets are coming up their worst week since the financial crisis, now we're going forward to this past week. U.S. stocks skyrocketed on Monday. I believe it was about 2%, leaving almost the correction territory. The Dow had the largest gain in history, now at 1,294 points. Percentage-wise, we had the best day since March 2009. The Dow Jones went up 5.09%. The S&P 500 4.60%. NASDAQ went up 4.49%. The Russell 2000, which you guys may not know, it's another stock index, went up 2.85%, and the Dow is now only 10.6% from the high. So remember, 10% correction, bad. Under 10%, just a correction, just a retracement before it could continue going up. So now, as of Monday, we're at 10.6 for the Dow. Tuesday, the stocks plunged 3%. The Fed made a surprise cut of 0.50 or 50 basis points and raised investor fears about the possible magnitude of the coronavirus. What they wanted to do is ease in order to help the economy. What they actually did is kind of started a little bit of a panic in investors. They viewed it as things are going to get really bad. That's why they surprisingly, in an emergency session, dropped the rates. On Wednesday, stocks skyrocketed an average of 4% higher on Wednesday after President Joe Biden became a serious front runner to Bernie Sanders, which is the socialist. This is due to the fact that a lot of people are thinking that Bernie Sanders wants to do the tax on the financial transactions. He also wants to go after the health industry as well. So now that Biden is a possible candidate or a leader, a front runner, it might be Biden against Trump instead of Bernie Sanders against Trump. So the market skyrocketed because people think that Biden is going to be a much better option than Bernie. Now remember, I'm reporting this based on the facts of the information. I always want to remind you guys, I don't want to get political. So whether you think Bernie Sanders would be great for the economy or not, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just letting you know what investors think and what actually happened, okay? On Thursday, U.S. stocks plunged over 3%. The Dow was down nearly 1,000. The Dow was nearly down 1,000 points. Shares of the banks and travel firms took a big hit. Again, fear from the coronavirus and the economic impact that it's going to start to affect. And Friday, the U.S. stocks again were lower, again due to the impact and the fear of the coronavirus. The Dow went up 1.79% for the week. It's down 9.37% for the year, so now we're no longer in that correction territory. S&P 500 went up 0.60%. It's down 8% for the year, and the Nasdaq is up 0.10%, and for the year it's now down 4.42%. In overseas market news, further stimulus from China helped the Asian markets start the week with great gains. The official PMI, or the manufacturing index from the National Bureau of Statistics in China, slipped 35.7%, the lowest level on record. And the gaming revenue, listen to this, the gaming revenue in Macau plunged 87.8% in February. That's a lot. So you guys can see that, we don't know, or a lot of analysts say that we shouldn't trust the numbers coming out of China. But I would venture to say that about 50% of the economy in China is still just shut. It's not working. Can you imagine? Second largest economy in the world. European markets are mixed. Investors now are starting to worry about literally an expected pandemic. It's going to be probably a major slowdown. The OECD also expected it's going to take a big hit to the economy overall in the first half of 2020. The European markets were mixed. Italy is the biggest loser at 5.69%. Istanbul went up 3.40%. In Latin America, the Bovespa was the biggest loser in Brazil at 6.30%, and the index in Santiago was the biggest positive at 2.57%. In Africa and Middle Eastern markets, South Africa the biggest winner at 2.01%. Egypt went down 5.35%, and in Asia and the Far East, China went up at 5.38%, the biggest winner, and the biggest loser was Australia at 3.56%. Bitcoin still not at 50,000 this year, like the analysts are saying. A little bit of sarcasm there for you guys. It is still up 30% for the year, and for the week it went up 4.52% at 9,137. Financial and banking news on Monday, the ECB, the European Central Bank, joined a number of central banks around the world, indicating that they're going to be ready to inject money and other things into the financial system and the markets to be able to go ahead and assist in case that it does start to go south. The Bank of Australia was actually the first to cut their rates on Tuesday to a record low of 0.5% due to the effect of the virus. Remember, they're in Asia where the epicenter is, so they're affected a lot more than the United States, at least for now in the beginning. Japan, the UK, France, and the United States have all shown willingness to inject far more cash into the system. And on Wednesday, Brazil led the Latin American currencies to an all-time low of 4.57%. It's down 12% for the year in 2020 after an emergency interest rate cut from the U.S. And just so you guys know the dynamic of what's happening, when things get bad and the market goes down, people take out money from the stock market and they put it into the treasuries. Now, treasuries, if you don't know, it's a fancy word for U.S. government bonds. People, the U.S. government borrows money and people give them the money for interest. There's so many people now that are putting their money into the bonds that they're at record lows, especially the 10-year, for example, right? So somebody who has cash and they're only earning, 0.02 or whatever ridiculous percentage a lot of these banks give us, they'll put it into the 10-year treasury bonds so they get a little bit more interest and they invest in it because they think it's secure. Now, this is a double whammy because when people take out money in the stock market, then the stocks even go further down and then we're in a vicious cycle. So that's part of the reason why a lot of these Latin American currencies had record lows, because now everybody's piling into the dollar like they're piling into the bonds because everybody thinks that the dollar is secure. May God be with you. May the God be with USD. So that's basically what's happening overall, right? That's kind of the dynamic. So you kind of understand what the dots mean and what they say, the fancy words on the news, the treasury yields and everything. The U.S. Federal Reserve, the central bank, is starting to retool capital rules as well for U.S. banks. Is one of the biggest changes since the post-crisis financial world. They're reducing the total number of capital requirements to 8 from 13, while maintaining a strong capital requirement for the very foundation of the framework. One of the interesting things that you guys might not know, the reason why the financial collapse happened, part of the reason in 2008 and 2009, during the Great Depression, there was something called the Glass-Steagall Act that was instituted. Basically what it meant is a broker that invests in the stock market can't be a bank. So your savings that you worked for your entire life, they can't just take it and put it into the stock market and play with it. Clinton was actually the president who removed that rule, and you guys can see during Bush's what do you call president administration tenure, during Bush's tenure, we had the financial crisis, or at least at the end, he was in the recovery phase. So this is a good and a bad thing, but obviously if you guys don't know, the banks work with what's called a fractional reserve system, which basically means every dollar, and these aren't the exact numbers. If some of you know the exact numbers, you can put it there in the comments. I just want you to understand how this works. When you deposit $1 into the bank, they can literally borrow $10 for every dollar that they have, basically. So that's why there's something called the bank run, because when everybody starts to take out their dollars, then the bank doesn't have any more money. See what I mean? So that's kind of the dynamic of what's happening. And we're getting very sensitive now into the situation of what's happening in the world. If you guys don't know, since in the U.S. we don't really receive a lot of international use, the fourth largest bank in India was nationalized, meaning that the government took it over. India, remember, is one of the top 10 economies in the world. So things are not great. The economy was never that great overall, even though the numbers say something different, right? And obviously Trump wants us to believe that everything is doing well because he wants to get reelected. Again, not to be political, that's what he wants and that's what they want to portray. Now, it has been a lot better than before, but we still haven't kind of gotten out of that. It's kind of like, I think everybody will be able to relate this. This is going to be funny. You go out on a Saturday night or Friday night, you get plastered. And on Monday when you go to work, you're still not at 100%, right? So you still kind of like feel, and then by Tuesday, then you're okay. We're still in Monday when it comes to the global economy. We haven't gotten out of the party of 2008 and 2009. So that's the problem, right? So even though, we're starting to feel better on Monday afternoon, things still aren't great. So that's basically what's happening, just so you know. The IMF announced for the dollar. The IMF announced $50 billion financing package to help emerging markets in the coronavirus as well. They're warning that this disease is posing a serious threat to global growth. The World Bank also pledged 12. Where are they getting all this money from is what I want to know. They're just literally like, hey, let's just inject here and inject there. You guys remember the record amount of debt that everybody has, right? The United States federal, the states, the municipalities, China. It's not going to be bueno. Not going to be bueno at all, guys. I've been telling you guys for a long time. You guys will see what's going to happen in the next 10 years. 10 years from 2020, if you guys are watching this video later. I mentioned to you guys about the U.S. Treasury yield reaching record lows on Friday. Commodities, crude oil collapsed. 2 weeks ago, it went down 20%. This week, it's now 10.88% that it went down. International crude, which is called Brent, went down 8.43%. It's down nearly 34% in 2020. One of the most hysterical things is that the OPEC total reduction of production of oil is going to be a possible 3.6 million barrels per day, which is the biggest since the crisis in 2008, and it's still going down. I just think that's really funny. Other than that, on Tuesday, gold and silver surged after the U.S. Fed dropped the interest rate by 0.50 or 50 basis points. Gold futures went up 2.28% for a recent high. Silver went up 2.96%. I hope you guys watched the video that I did about the silver futures. If you guys listened to it on the podcast, remember, go to YouTube and watch it because it's really interesting how I'm doing everything. And I share some losses that I have, which I think is important because in this business, the trading business, most people unfortunately share all the amazing winning trades they have, but nobody shares the losing trades they have. So I wanted to do a video kind of explaining to you guys the losers that I have at the moment and the dynamic of how I'm trading at the moment for educational purposes only, obviously, because we don't trade people's money. We're not trading advisors, and we just want to help you to educate you over time. Okay? Platinum futures are up 1.28%. Palladium futures are down 1.20%. Investors are returning to gold as a store of value after the Fed did the emergency rate cut. It sparked the collapse of the 10-year Treasury bonds. Remember, the demand brought the interest rate down, as I mentioned to you guys a moment ago. Gold is now at a 7-year high at 1,688.90. It reached that this week. Highest level since January 2013 as people are plowing into gold-backed exchange-traded futures or ETFs. Bullion now is headed for its biggest weekly gain since 2009, obviously due to the fact, the chaos, which is produced by the coronavirus and other things as well. Global holdings are now at a record, including an 8-week expansion of global holdings. Gold is up 5.54% for the week. Silver is up 4.18% for the week. Political news in Israel: Benjamin Netanyahu, the Conservative Party, the Likud Party, is the third national election in less than a year for Israel. They had 2 seats short of the 61 majority they needed to be able to rule the parliament, the Congress, or the government. But they're going to make some agreements, concessions to other religious right parties to be able to go ahead and continue to control the government. Slovakia and Slovenia are voting conservative as well. Everybody's kind of leaning right in that Eastern European area, including Hungary, for example. Le Pen in France is looking good as well. Germany, if you guys remember the elections that I mentioned to you guys in one of the territories there that always voted for the far left for the first time ever in history, voted for the far right. It's backwards for you guys, right? Far right is over here. I keep forgetting that. But it's a populist nationalist drift in the Eastern Europe due to the fact that voters are increasingly worried about their sovereignty and also the situation with the unfettered immigration as well. In economic news, the U.S. added 273,000 jobs in February, puts employment back at 3.5%. The estimates for the month were just 175, so they smashed the estimates. And it's providing an indication that the economy remains resilient, even though we have this absolute global chaos with the coronavirus. Corporate news: there's an airline in the UK called Flybe, which collapsed. They went bankrupt on Thursday. The slump in demand from the coronavirus was the last blow. It was a struggling carrier for years. It was founded in 1979 and at one point was the largest independent regional airline in all of Europe. They carried around 8 million passengers a year and operated over 2,000 routes, including another airline, Lufthansa, which is Germany's largest airline. They're going to ground and cancel 25% of their total capacity. It's 7,100 European flights, mostly within Germany and Italy. And the shares are down about 29% so far this year. And Amazon is telling its employees to avoid coming into the office in Seattle because an employee tested positive for the coronavirus as well. So the state of Washington, if you guys don't know, because you're international, I know I have a lot of you international guys, Washington is on the top right corner of the United States near Canada. So it's California, then it's Oregon, and then it's Washington. Almost forgot that one. Oregon is a beautiful state, by the way. In trade news, the UK government is stating that it wants to cover 80% of external trade agreements with free trade agreements by 2022 as it seeks to build new relationships after they left the European Union on January 31st of this year, 2020. And in technology, Germany is taking the first steps to be able to run the economy based on hydrogen instead of fossil fuels. The ministers are lining up deals with nations, including Nigeria, to be able to produce the hydrogen from renewable energy in the near future. In investment news, the International Air Transport Association is saying that the potential hit to global airline revenue is going to be $113 billion, sending the S&P 500 airlines index down 5.7%. Other travel companies like cruise companies went down quite a bit as well. Carnival Corp went down 9.5%. Royal Caribbean Cruises went down 12.26%. And Norwegian Cruise Line went down by 10.27%. In the GM and CEO of GM, General Motors, Mary Barra, roll your R's, don't forget if you guys want to speak Spanish. They want to be able to sell 1 million electric vehicles a year in North America by the mid-decade, and that includes joint ventures with China. In addition to sunken costs, they want to invest an additional $20 billion by 2025 for electric vehicle and autonomous driverless technology. French top court grants that Uber relationship with independent contractors in France are going to be reclassified as employees, which is not going to be very good for the people driving for Uber, nor for Uber itself. In international events, the coronavirus now has climbed to over 100,000 as of Friday. We have a situation now where we have over 7 countries reporting their first cases, and the outbreak has killed 3,400 people. Just remember, when you're getting kind of nervous about the situation with the coronavirus, there's about 60,000 people a year that die of the flu in the United States. So we have about 3,400 so far dead in the world overall. So keep in mind. Other than that, EU ambassadors are voicing outrage on a meeting this week due to the fact that Turkey, what they are saying, Turkey, Erdogan, the president, is doing a form of blackmail by releasing the immigrants that are in the borders of his country. If you guys don't know, Europe pays Turkey billions of dollars to house the migrants and not allow them to come through to Europe. He since has released quite a bit of those migrants, and now he's saying that, they're saying that they're going to coerce them to pay more, which they're going to have to do because otherwise they're going to have a huge inundation of immigrants into their borders. Hungary Prime Minister Orban is saying that the new wave of immigrants that are trying to cross the border from Turkey into the EU must be stopped as far from the border as possible, and also that he's ready to help on the front lines in Greece, which are where a lot of these migrants are coming. And the World Health Organization is warning of global shortages and also price gouging of medical equipment, protective equipment, fighting the fast spread coronavirus. He's asked a lot of the companies that produce face masks and other things to increase production by 40% as the death toll from the respiratory disease is mounting. If you guys haven't seen the video that I did already about the coronavirus, go ahead and watch it. I did mention to you guys we're in March now. It's going to get worse before it gets better, but by April, I believe we'll most likely reach a peak due to the fact that the coronavirus will not be able to spread as easily in warmer weather. Other than that, unusual facts this week. Italy is beginning a nationwide quarantine for seniors, urges elderly people to be able to stay indoors as possible. They also banned public events, and even though they haven't reported it or they denied the report, they're closing schools and universities even momentarily. Coronavirus now exceeds more deaths outside of China than inside of China, where the coronavirus started. If you do want to believe the numbers that come out of China, because a lot of analysts say that they're not being truthful. They're never truthful, some analysts. And Anthony Lewandowski filed, he sounds like a guy from The Matrix, right? Lewandowski filed for bankruptcy this week after saying that he's got to pay Google $179 million due to the fact that he was one of the executives in the auto driving or the self-driving division there in Google's project. He's starting his own firm, and then he sold it to Uber. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to stay safe out there and be careful with the virus.